We have, so the ACME Providers join us 3 days a week. We break up into smaller groups twice a week, Monday and Wednesday. And then the group that you just saw, they meet with us on Saturday, all 6 of them. We split the programming. On Monday and Wednesday, our lifters do the deadlift and the bench press. And on Saturday, they do the squat and the press. And then sometimes we throw in some chin-ups. So one of the things we first discovered was our special needs lifters tend to respond best to tactile cues. Verbal cues can work sometimes they don't. It's entirely dependent on the person and on the day, really. But tactile cues seem to work the best. The first one that we developed, actually Coach Schaller developed, was using his foot to actually place the lifter's foot exactly where it needs to go. And we found that's very successful. The lifters tend to respond to that well. So as a general rule, we try not to touch the bar for any lifter, but in this particular case, hands on the bar makes a lot of difference because oftentimes the lifters will collapse, will give out, when you least expect it, and you have to have your hands on the bar, but we do not lift the weight for them. There's never any additional force provided. All of the force production is their own.
The occasional hand is used to prevent any unsafe movement of the bar as well. For Marcia and Katie, they have a tendency to roll the bar up their back. Mm-hmm. So simply placing a hand in front of the bar prevents it from rolling up onto the neck.
Now, Nick sometimes Nick has a hard time telling his muscles what they ought to do. So in the case of the squat, we have to shove out his knees. He helps me, but I do a lot of the pushing there. He also, on the bench press, he has a real hard time controlling the bar path going up, so I tend to have my hands on there, but unfortunately for him, I'm usually pushing straight down with the bar, so it doesn't make it easier, it actually makes it a bit tougher for him.
Yeah, so most of the tactile cueing when you're working with special needs lifters goes through kind of a cost-benefit analysis, more so than regular lifters. So tactile cueing past maybe the first or second weighted warm-up for lifters who don't have special needs, the cost is almost always greater than the benefit because you're adding too much feedback and you're going to screw the movement up for them. Mm-hmm. But with these lifters, special needs lifters, sometimes the cost benefit analysis is a lot different. And a lot of times we'll end up sacrificing stuff that is part of the model that might be important otherwise for things that are even more important. So for Nick, it's a priority that the bar doesn't slide up his back and hit him in the head. Mm-hmm. Everything else is secondary to that because he can't squat if he has a concussion or if the bar is falling off his back.
That's right.
So, it becomes much more of a what do we have to do versus what we would like when we're considering how to get these lifters strong.
That's right.
Elbows up and in.
Come on, Michael.
Elbows up, in.
What a thing.
Michael, squeeze your elbows together. There you go. Hold your breath, Michael. Hold your breath.
Come on, Mike.
Down slow, up fast. Down slow, up fast. Walk it in.
Good job, Michael.
Yeah.
There is really not a whole lot out there for barbell training for special needs lifters. It's just the case that most of the time people are very nervous or hesitant about putting our lifters under the bar. So most of what we've done has been trial and error. There's very little research that we've done other than working through each individual. We found that it is much more individual based. The template works best most of the time, but in the case of special needs lifters, it's always a one-on-one, individual basis.
Yeah, the application tends to be much more specific and unique to the lifter, but the underlying theory and the intent and the theme is the exact same as it would be for any other lifter. Yes. A lot of the times when you're talking to people on the boards, you hear somebody say something like, I wish I could squat 500, or, I wish I could be, somebody who's pressing 3 plates or something like that. And the response to that is always that lifting those kinds of weights isn't the special thing. You're not special if you can lift a lot of weight. What's special is finding somebody who's actually willing to put in the work, and this is very true for these lifters too. So everything applies to them the same way, it's just the way you go about it. And, they have variations, just like normal lifters, and kind of what they can do, their limitations. They just seem to be a little bit more profound in some ways. But Ryan Roloski, who I think you spoke with earlier, not affiliated with ACME Providers, but also another special needs lifter, is a prime example of that. He's got, two very committed parents, and he's extremely committed. I think they drive, 30 minutes to the gym one way every single day, and the kid just does not miss lifts.
Yes.
Right? And he's pulling in the mid 300s, right? And he's got a left arm that before he started lifting was essentially useless. So, even though the small bits, even though they don't seem small all the time, where you're holding the bar into somebody's back, and the programming sometimes has different applications, in the long run, those are actually, small bits of information. They're small changes, but the intent and the theory behind it is all exactly the same.
One thing we've really learned is these lifters have grit, and if you push them, they respond. They adapt like any human, and we don't view them as special needs lifters. We view them as lifters who happen to have special needs.
Yes.
And they're very supportive of each other
Yes.
too. I think that's really important to their motivation, and getting them here each week is their support system within the group.
Yeah, it's really important to note that the only time we ever use the qualifier special in front of needs or athlete is when we're talking to somebody outside of the gym. The word never even comes into the gym. So when they're in here, they're just athletes, and
Yes.
to each other, they're just athletes, and to us, they're just athletes. The only time special comes into the equation is when you have to explain to somebody else what you're doing.
Yeah, that's
Right?
exactly
So
right.
they're treated very much like the grown adult people who are, in their own minds, and they're very capable, when they come in here, and they kind of prove that, and they're treated that way.
Yes, there is no difference. Coach Schaller and I yell at them as we yell at everybody else.
Yes. Sometimes more. The big credit has to go to Mark Abramovic for a lot of this.
Yes. Mark is a good friend of mine. He's a professor of finance with me at St. Vincent College. And Mark's sister Joelle is one of the ACME residents. And it was Mark's initial suggestion that we kind of observe and work with her and possibly introduce some strength training to the residents. At the time, they were thinking about going to a global gym, and it turns out that the trainer that was going to work with our folks was going to put them on some silly machine-based protocol that had no real advancement. So we offered the alternative to the ACME folks, and they were rightfully nervous at first, but we demonstrated to both the lifters and to the owners and the caregivers that it's safe, it's useful, it does exactly what we predict it will do, and they enjoy it. And we started working with Joelle. We started working with Michael Anthony. We started working with Katie and Marcia in September of 2016. And then in February of 2017, Nick, Mike, and Strong John joined us. And they've been with us ever since. We decided to move to our own facility here at Iron City Athletic Club in July of 2017 because we needed a dedicated space. Previously, we were actually doing the training in the basement of one of the group homes, and we decided we needed a dedicated place, so we were able to put this together, and it's been quite successful, I think. I think they've done a great job.
Yep.
In the basement with equipment donated by Mr. Abramovic.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
How much
Oh,
do you-
self-confidence. Nick.
Yeah, Nicholas,
just
when we
has
first
really
met
grown.
Nick, he was very, very introverted. And what we discovered about Nick is that he has a very wry and cutting sense of humor. Yes, he's a rather wicked gentleman at times. We've seen their confidence, all six of them. Joelle no longer lives with us, unfortunately, but she had made great progress as well. Here's a quick story about Nick Kozer. About 6 or 7 months into his training, he was at a park in Pennsylvania called Ohio Pow, and at the park he had tripped and fell over a root that was sticking out, and he sprained his ankle. Now, typically, that probably would have been a bigger injury. Now, I don't know what would have happened to him, but likely a fall at his age and general levels of former frailty, there were probably going to be some broken bones there, right? But it was just a sprain. He was in a lot of pain, and he was very sad because he couldn't lift, because this is a man who enjoys what he does. So we invited him to come out and just do some bench presses with us 3 days after the initial sprain. The swelling had gone down a little bit, and he was able to put some weight on it, but he was still in a little bit of pain. So we talked with Beverly, his mom, and we talked to the folks at ACME, and we had this radical idea that we were going to actually get him to deadlift right there with this sprained ankle. And we were very safe. We had all of our spotters, even more safe than typically, and he pulled a real light weight, and it was a little bit painful, but he did it. And he noticed that by the time the workout was over, he did a few sets at, I believe it was 31 pounds or something like that. It hurt a little bit less, and he was fine. There was no great cataclysmic explosion of the ankle or anything like that. He finished up his lift, and he was really proud and happy that he was able to do it. Came back a few days later, we added a little bit more weight, still very light, focus on form. And wouldn't you know it, his sprained ankle healed, I think, much quicker than it would have otherwise. And he was back to squatting, pressing, deadlifting in a matter of a few weeks.
Yep. And then his mom, Beverly, has been quite, supporter of what we've been doing.
Initially, she was very nervous. Yes.
Yeah, but seeing kind of the way that his life has progressed and kind of the quality of life as far as things that he can do and things that he can do better now. Things as simple as being able to get on a boat by himself.
Yes, that was they take a yearly trip to Erie, Pennsylvania, and initially they'd have to get on a boat. It was a bit of an ordeal for Nick to get on the boat. He needed assistance, and now he just jumps right on the boat himself.
Yep.
And that's the type of thing that things that we all take for granted that some of our special needs lifters don't. That's the things that we're most proud of, I think.
Yep.
Stand up tall. Foot to my foot.
Right there. Toes out. Big
Stand up
breath.
Big breath and
Up.
go.
No pause, John.
Come on,
That was beautiful.
No
Nick.
pause. Come right up. Come right up. Up. There we go. Good.
Dr. Racculia with your chest.
One more. Tight belly. Up.
Way to go.
Walk it in.
Those were really good.
You guys are really good. Pause at the bottom of that. ACME Providers has done a really, really great thing. Not only bringing them here to us, but just in general, they're probably one of the best kind of care facilities of their kind that you can find.
That's right.
Pretty much anywhere in the country. We often joke about it when we're talking to the athletes and the aides that they have a better social life than we do, which is true because they're always doing everything. They horseback ride, they play baseball, they go to games, bowling, Special Olympics.
Dances.
We have
Yo-yo conventions.
yo-yo conventions. Two of our athletes, Michael Anthony and John, obviously they're all athletes, but Michael Anthony and John compete in the Special Olympics, but they take it very, very seriously. So Michael Anthony can tell you the exact number of medals he has. But they give these people kind of an opportunity to get out and do stuff and that they might not otherwise have, and that a lot of times that they're limited from because of whatever disabilities or limitations that they may have. But again, like Nicholas said, they were a little bit hesitant getting into this, and obviously that kind of makes sense. Nobody else has really done anything like this, at least kind of the way we're doing it. But they've been a very strong support base for us as we've gone on from this, and as we've proven that this can be beneficial, especially for these lifters, not in spite of their disabilities but because of them. They've kind of, I don't want to say turn around because they've been supportive from the beginning. They've been supportive from the beginning, but it's been interesting seeing the way how we can teach people, not just lifters to lift, but the fact that we can address that problem of the low expectations for these kinds of lifters and these athletes.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think that what I would encourage anyone who works with somebody with special needs is to avoid that bigotry of low expectations. I mean, we do not coddle our lifters. We push them hard, and we yell at them appropriately when they need to fix something. And if they don't go deep enough on the squat, we don't count that rep, right? And that's how it should be always. And they respond to that. They know that. They know that they are not
Treated differently.
Yeah, they are not treated. They are not people with special needs who happen to lift. They are lifters, they are athletes who happen to have special needs. And that's the one takeaway that I would encourage anyone that has somebody who has special needs in their life. They should, think about pushing them and getting them under the bar and getting them strong, because they need it as much, if not more, than everybody else.
Yes. And for anybody watching who might not be in the gym right now, this does, in fact, remove any excuse that you have to be in the gym.
Yes. When you see Nick Kozer squat, then you have to provide me with an excuse why you can't.
So I'm sorry that you're tired and that you worked all day, but we have, how old is Ryan? 22?
26? No, 22.
22. We have a 22-year-old kid who's pulling 335 pounds.
Who couldn't pull a 31-pound bar.
Who couldn't pull a 31-pound bar, and he doesn't miss. And guess what? Yeah, he has a life too. So, and when you're tired and you're beat up,
he never misses.
There are people who are dealing with things that are orders of magnitude more difficult than you are, and they're doing it twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. So there's really no excuse to not be under the bar right now, so go lift.
Thank you for ACME Providers for being powered to us and teach you a quality. Yeah. 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 Yeah.